Hi, everybody. Just a little disclaimer before we start the podcast. This episode was recorded on Tuesday, January 9th in the morning, right before some of the events that took place in Ecuador, which I'm sure you've heard about. We did an emergency broadcast, which was released yesterday, Thursday. So we will link that in the description down below if you'd like to watch. Enjoy the podcast.
Doctors here tend to have something of a natural approach in general. Not that they don't work with pharmaceuticals, not that they won't do surgery, not that they aren't MDs, normal doctors, but in the culture, there's still some of that connection to lifestyle and herbs and in things like stress and trying to really tinker and figure out why is the body, behaving this way and not that way.
People get their dental work done here. People can do some of those testings and go see some professionals for a fraction of Ecuador. We're spoiled. You can get a full meal for $3. That's a pretty good meal. We can eat for the whole family for $12, and it includes a drink, a soup, and a main dish in a lot of local restaurants. So we do that a lot. Actually, it's almost cheaper than cooking at home.
Well, a lot of people in Ecuador don't have health insurance. Like, it's not super common amongst the population here to carry health insurance. Ecuador does have free public health care. So you can go to the emergency room and get treated regardless.
For a fraction of the price.
It's more of an industry, and people talk about it, but it's available here. Yeah. People don't really talk about it. That's much more popular in Mexico and other parts of South America and Central America.
Yeah, someone was mentioning if someone's interested in maybe checking out Ecuador but not ready to make the move here, a good trade-off is to spend the winters here. Yeah. Even though maybe you'll miss the holidays, or you could leave right after the holidays and come spend. But that's what my parents do.
Hello and welcome back to the Ecuador Insider Podcast. Jesse, Carl, very excited to be rejoined by Brandon, back by popular demand from a trip to the States, which we'll talk a little bit about today. But before we get into anything, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified on all new content. And if you're interested in learning more about life here in Vilcabamba, Ecuador and surrounding region, come visit us on our next Vilcabamba lifestyle retreat. Does anybody happen to have those dates handy?
It's in April.
It's April 12th.
April 12th.
To the 21st.
To the 21st.
Hey!
Yes!
Through in the
It
club.
pops up every time we open our website, so you can't
April
avoid
12th to the
looking at it.
21st.
So if you're interested, that is a 9-day all-inclusive retreat. It's really a blast. If you go onto our We Travel site, or even on our our Google business page, I guess, you can read a whole bunch of reviews from previous participants. It's a 9-day retreat that's really designed to both sort of maximize your comfort and sort of vacation vibes, while also getting a real 9-day hands-on crash course on all things Ecuador, including all of the legalities and all the things you have questions on. We partner with some leading experts from around the country who give presentations on just about every subject you could imagine. You're touring the areas, you're staying in an absolutely beautiful, very comfortable, peaceful, relaxed resort. We throw in, some nice massages and some good stuff like that. But it's a great time, so we'd love to have you down here.
Yeah, and it's like twofold. If you're interested in the area, or you're even considering moving from the country you're in to Ecuador, it gives you all the information you need to really to make a good decision, like whether it's the right time or what do I need to do before I make the move. Like, you're gonna get all that. And then on the other hand, if you already know you're coming, you already know you're going to leave the country you're in and you're going to go to another place for at least for a while, like, it's invaluable from that perspective too. If you already know you're coming, because you're going to learn about all the ins and outs and how to be successful and get your life up and running much quicker with much less churn. So, like, for me, I wasn't in the first group. I already knew we were going somewhere else for a while. So I didn't really need to know about the area from that perspective, but I wish I would have had it to be able to get my life up, because I didn't know you guys, like this then, and it would have been really helpful for my family to, like, get things in order faster and smoother. So if you're interested if you have any of those interests, it's definitely worth worth checking out the retreat. And, I think we've got, we try and keep the retreats manageable from like a perspective that we don't want 25, 30 people. It's really too many for like to have a great experience. We want it to be like an intimate, personal experience where you're getting a lot of value and you have a lot of attention from us. So when we've had bigger retreats and they've been successful, people have been happy, but it's almost like it's not the right size. So we kind of limit the amount of people that we allow on the retreat so that we have at each particular retreat. We still have some spaces for the April retreat, but it's filling up. We just had another sign up over the weekend. I sent you guys a note. So it is filling up. So if you are interested, shoot us a note to retreat at abecuador.com. If you have questions, check out our We Travel page. We'll put a link in the description below. We could put a PDF of, a prior retreat flyer that you guys can check out. We'll put it in the description as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in real quick, just add a few things. You mentioned we toured different areas. I'm amazed about when I meet people that have lived here for 2, 3, 4 years, and they tell me, I've never been to Yangana, I've never been to Kinara, Masanamaka, where's that? Timanuma. And so we tour all of the surrounding areas, which are, in a 30-minute, 45-minute radius from here, but still there's a lot to see, a lot of beautiful countryside. Also, there's plenty of fun activities that you haven't mentioned. We go horseback riding, we go to the waterfall, we go to the river, we climb the Mandango Mountain, which is great. And you get to experience all the great restaurants here, which is a huge plus of living in the small town that's been populated by expats. There's tons of international restaurants, delicious food. So every single day you get to experience multiple restaurants here, which we end up, eating some great food and sharing time, making new friends. You also get to meet some members of the community. We visit some farms, other expats that have decided to relocate here. So it's a great time. So we hope to see you here.
So, Christmas in the snow, huh? You get a little snow back home?
We got a little dusting.
How was your trip back home?
Yeah, we got a little dusting. No snow on Christmas. So like at this point in my life, I don't want snow ever except for like Christmas, maybe like Christmas to New Year's.
And let me just interject briefly because it's funny before we get to the story. So your wife and children left a couple of weeks before you did.
Correct.
And I hung out with you a good amount for those couple of weeks.
Yep.
You were not excited about going back this time. And it's interesting. You're like 2+ years in.
Yeah.
And you kind of, describe, I don't know, do you want to describe that a little bit?
I'm just done. Like the Midwest, like, all right, let me start with what I'm excited about. Like I'm excited to go back and see family, see friends, see people that I've known my whole life, to maintain those relationships and check in with people, see people, like that feels good. That's rewarding. I value those relationships. I want to maintain those. So I'm excited to go back for that. I'm much more excited to go back and visit in the summer in the Midwest. In the Midwest, Chicago summers are great. Some of the best in the world, right? So the weather's great. But the Midwest in the winter, if there is no snow, then it's usually super cold, or if everything's dead. Like there's not like an abundance of evergreens everywhere in the Midwest. So all the trees are in hibernation or dead, they have no leaves, everything's brown, and if there's no snow, it's muddy and it seems dirty, even though it's not, it's just, and it's foggy. And get this, I was there for 2 weeks. I was there for 14 days in the Chicagoland area. I did not see, and I slept in a couple of days, so maybe the sun came out in the morning, I don't know, but 14 days, I literally didn't see the sun until the day before I left. That's the first time I saw the sun in 2 weeks. It was like, I don't look forward to that. You feel, I felt, we had fog. There was a couple nights that it was so foggy, you couldn't see from maybe a couple feet behind you, Carl. From me to you, just a few feet, it was that foggy. We had to pull over almost to drive. You couldn't see. It felt dangerous to drive in that kind of fog. But it was just gloomy, so I just kind of expected that, hoping we were going to get snow, but I looked ahead of the weather and it didn't look like we were going to get it. So I wasn't excited for that. On the plus side, the first 4 days or so, it was like I had some 50s and 40-degree weather. So at least it wasn't,
Yeah.
oppressively cold. And I didn't get the cold the whole trip, actually. I lucked out. Like now there's some Arctic blast coming from the Pacific Northwest that's going to hit, and then or at least drop temperatures pretty dramatically. And then there's some snow blizzards coming from the east. So, I talked to my parents last night. They're getting, they're projected to get 8 to 15 inches or something over the next couple days. So we just missed the snow, and the cold. So I wasn't looking forward to that. I wasn't looking forward to, I guess, the prices of things.
Right.
I've been spoiled in Ecuador, so I just knew things were going to be more expensive. And boy, wow, I was just back 6 months ago in the summer, and I don't know. I didn't have all the data on exactly how much more expensive things were, but you almost couldn't go into a restaurant with a family of 4 and walk out under $150. Not a chain restaurant, but not like some super high-end restaurant. You're dropping 120, 150, and you're not eating like a filet, like we went in South Beloit, or in Beloit. It's on the border of northern Illinois and Wisconsin. I took my niece and my kids with my parents to some Pixar movie or DreamWorks, I forget what it's called now. We took them to it, and then we went to this bar afterwards. It's known for burgers, but it's in southern Wisconsin. It's not Chicago. It's not New York. It's not Boston. It's not L.A. And we get a couple of burgers. Everybody gets a burger. The kids get kids meals. And I had a flight of beers. This is kind of funny. So we got a flight of, my dad is old school, right? So we get a flight of beers, and and it's like IPAs and different craft brews, and I have him put a PBR in, and he starts
Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Pabst
for
Blue
our
Ribbon,
young Canadian
yeah.
friend.
And I'm having him try the beers, and just to see which one he's gonna like.
That one.
Which one do you think he liked?
That one.
PBR, baby. Yeah, Pops. The PBR. He loved the PBR. He didn't like anything else. He actually did there was this dreamsicle or cream ale that he kind of liked. But anyway, so we go there. We got a flight of beers. It was maybe like $12. It wasn't super expensive for the flight of beers. And everybody had water, and I think my mom had a soft drink or something, and it was like $190 or $180. I'm like, it's just for a burger. It wasn't even like a great burger, but it was like, so that I was not looking forward to that, and that definitely, reality met my expectation there. So,
And maybe for people watching, that's completely normal because they're used to those types of pricing. But here in Ecuador, we're spoiled. You can get a full meal for $3. That's a pretty good meal. We can eat for the whole family for $12, and it includes a drink, a soup, and a main dish in a lot of the local restaurants. So we do that a lot. Actually, it's almost cheaper than cooking at home. It saves you a lot of time.
Yeah, totally. And they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah. So I definitely missed that about being here in Ecuador. Not only the restaurant options and the prices, but then even cooking. So we did a lot. We were doing a lot of visiting. So we were going out to dinner and meeting different family and friends. A lot of the trips, a lot of that revolved around going to a restaurant or ordering food in occasionally. So we didn't cook a ton, but even the few times we did go shopping, it's the stuff that we want to eat, the grass-fed, organic, unprocessed, no chemicals, no preservative, that's the most expensive stuff in the grocery store, by far. So even, it's interesting because, people I've known my whole life and friends and family there, they you could see in their eyes, some of them, where they knew something's not quite right, but nobody's really talking about, nobody seemed overly concerned about the stock market. Nobody seemed overly concerned about real estate or the economy or prices. It was like kind of underhanded complaints about pricing, but it's kind of stuff that people always kind of complain about, right? But there wasn't this overt, wow, this is really different. And that kind of goes back to the boiling frog, analogy that we've made many times with regard to as things change slowly, you don't notice it. And then now that I'm going back with big chunks in between, now I'm really seeing the differences. Sure. And it goes on everything. Like coming back, seeing the difference in the size of my pets, and and actually we lost Holly, over the trip. So the last podcast I was on, I don't even know why I picked her up and held her in the thumbnail.
Right.
And that was like her last hurrah, man. That was it. So, so that was tough for the kids to miss her, but just seeing the difference in the pets, or seeing the difference in, having those 6 months breaks and seeing like my nephews and seeing how they've changed, and their parents don't even notice. And I don't notice my kids growing and maturing, and then other people notice that. So it's that same concept. Like when you're with someone and you're in the environment and you're seeing people every day, you don't notice the change. But then when you're away from it for an extended period of time, and then you reintroduce to that environment, then then it's really clear to you. That's kind of how I see the pricing and the inflation and some of that in the States now, being away from it, and why I understand why most of the people that I go back and talk to don't really see it.
Yeah, this part of Ecuador is not that easy to get to. It's a trip.
No,
right?
it is.
If you're going, like you're in the Midwest, so you're probably through Florida or through Mexico
Often.
or Panama
Yep.
to get to Chicago. You're a flight from Loja to Quito.
And then an hour
They say
taxi.
they're gonna add the Loja Guayaquil flights back. I hope they do. That'll make what I'm saying a little bit better, because there's a lot of options out of Guayaquil internationally as well. But you're an hour flight to Quito, then you're a flight to somewhere else, and then Chicago.
Yeah, you're like a 4 or 5 hour flight. It's probably like 8. With the domestic flight, it's probably like 9 hours of airtime, but it's 8 to 9 hours. But you're with the layovers and the pre-checks and all that stuff. I mean, it's a
long travel.
It's a long day, yeah. And if you try and get to Vilcabamba in the same day, like good luck. I've done it a couple times, and it wipes you out.
Yeah. So it's a trip, is my point. When you want to go back home for people, and so everybody kind of has to find that balance between, how often do I want to go back and brave those inconveniences and those high costs and whatever family drama we all have back home, versus staying here and like missing your family on the holidays, for example. And I think for a lot of people, being away from friends and family is one of the big, maybe the biggest drawback or one of the biggest obstacles to
Living abroad.
Yeah. And I think that's a concern for everybody. I used to travel back like 3 to 4 times a year. Then like probably 2.5, 3 years went by, or actually probably 3+ years went by where I didn't travel once. Now I've kind of traveled once in the last 13 months. So it's slowed down for me considerably.
Yeah.
The first couple of holidays that I had here were super sad. So I decided at that point, I'm just going back for all the holidays. So I used to fly back for Thanksgiving and then come back. And then,
And then go
3
back for
weeks
Christmas.
later, 3 weeks later, fly back out for Christmas. And then I'd go back in the summer, and then sometimes another trip. Now I haven't been doing that as much. And it's kind of interesting to see like how different families and different people deal with the holidays. There's a close-knit community in Vilcabamba. There's a lot of people who are good friends and support each other, and that's really how the community is. So there's all these families that go to like one of the hosterias for Christmas Day, and they swim in the pool and swim in the hot tub and go in the steam room, and that's kind of become a tradition.
Yeah, the one year my family stayed in Ecuador for the Christmas, I think it was 2021, we did that. We went to the hosteria.
Yeah.
It was fun, it was enjoyable. It didn't feel like Christmas.
No.
It felt weird, but it was cool that it was community, like that was the cool part about it, but it still felt weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
What-
definitely different. Like we went to the coast a couple of times. That was nice because at least it was different. It felt special.
Right.
It's like, all right, if we're not gonna go home and be with family, or we're at the beach, we could make it special. That was kind of cool. I
Right.
enjoyed that.
Yeah. Speaking of special, while I was back, I got you guys. I was inspired by your robust, amazing personalities, and I decided I found some. Well, actually, my kids kind of found them, and they said, wow, that's for Carl and that's for Jesse. So I brought you back some presents.
No.
and
Again, that's
they're in, these are regifted bags from, you know,
You're doing what you can to save the planet.
Tango Romeo, you know, from our hats here. And I wore this because Richard, I know you're commenting on a lot of our YouTube videos, and I appreciate your engagement. And you seem to not like these hats, so this is for you, Richard. I'm even wearing the checkerboard side just for you because I like it. Thank you, Tango Romeo. These are your gifts, so you'll have to. I think those are right.
All right, let's see. Moment of truth.
All right, you got to read both sides.
There's a shirt here.
All right. So,
and this is. Do you understand like the twofold here? It's not just about football.
well then, I mean, you should explain.
So Jesse is a diehard Eagles fan, or he used to be. Now he's kind of a washed-up old man that complains about them.
Now I'm a vegan.
Soy boy. But he really embodies this personality. Nobody likes us, and we don't care.
I'm gonna wear this.
It's a great shirt. It's a great shirt, man. And then Carl,
I actually
Merry
like
Christmas.
mine. I actually like mine.
No, you should both like them.
I thought,
Yeah.
I thought you could be offended a little bit. You don't get offended that easily.
Carl, I flexed and the sleeves fell off. It might be a little small, man.
It says XL.
That's XL, but man, look at Carl. Speaking of, I had friends back home.
Thanks, Brendan.
Merry Christmas. Good.
I'm gonna wear it at the gym.
Awesome.
Every time.
So I went back to my old neighborhood and saw some old friends that I've known since preschool, and you know they watch the pod and stuff, and they know like I did the stem cell stuff, so I hadn't worked out in 7 months, so they let me know, and they let me know that I'm looking much more like Jesse these days than Carl, that I need to get back in the gym. Merry Christmas, fellas.
Thank you, brother.
Nice.
Well, let's actually, you mentioned that. Let's jump into that for a second. How's that going with your knee and the stem cells?
That's good. Yeah. Like, so I was cleared before we went back to start rehab, but then we moved to a new place, and then with the travel, like I didn't actively do anything, but now we're here this week. We just got back, so we're getting settled this week, and then next week I'm going to start actively rehabbing. So we'll see how, like, everything from like a symptom, pain, inflammation, everything's been good. Now we'll see once I start ramping up activity, and I've got to redevelop the quad to raise the patella to stop some of the inflammation from the nerve or the joint capsule and the tendons and stuff that run there. But I mean, all signs are pointing to good. So we'll see how the rehab goes.
So your Egyptian stem cell doctor who charges very reasonable rates.
Yeah.
In the 8,000 person town in
Vilcabamba.
Andean town of Southern Ecuador.
Right.
And it's going pretty well because it's interesting.
Well.
Like I was talking to a couple people recently who are working with him on some stuff, and sort of raving about that the fact that exists at those price levels.
No, it's awesome. I mean, and he was one of the highest, if not the highest ranking medical officer in the Egyptian army. He's a MD in Egypt. He's a licensed medical doctor. I don't know if that's the exact term in Ecuador, but he's a traditional MD here as well. He's I think by degree, he's got his PhD in clinical oncology or surgical oncology. He's done, regenerative medicine, secondary education or continuing education in the United States, in Florida. So he's got a pretty broad and deep skill set. And the fact that he's got options to do platelet-rich plasma with growth factors, stem cells, both stromal vascular fraction, which is the fat cell-derived stem cells, and the bone marrow that they tap your iliac crest and aspirate bone marrow there. It's wild. It's wild that they're doing, that it's here, but it's here at a significantly reduced cost relative to where you would go to a clinic in the States. And these types of treatments aren't they're not FDA approved in the States. They're not, so you're not getting insurance to cover this. Like you have an injury or you have some type of issue that you're trying to treat regeneratively with versus surgery or some other traditional treatment. Those will be covered by the insurance, but this procedure wouldn't. So you'd have to go to a private clinic in the States or to do that. And then it's all out of pocket, and then the prices are dramatically increased. But it's interesting because all the athletes, any of the professional athletes, most of them do this type of stuff. Like there was just a doctor I don't know if he was a doctor, but he was just on Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about working on Aaron Rodgers' rehab. Mm-hmm. So Aaron Rodgers had a surgery that did this. It was like a newer, I think, or not traditional Achilles surgery, but then he did all this regenerative stuff simultaneously with peptides and stem cells and all this stuff. And this doctor's talking about it. And if the Jets were in the playoff hunt, Rodgers was going to come back this season to play football at the professional level. It's unheard of, right? I just got goosebumps thinking about it. Like I was rooting. I hate Aaron Rodgers as a Bear fan my whole life. He owns us. But man, I was rooting for him. I was rooting for the Jets actively because I wanted to see him come back and see that story so that they can just talk about it. Like so people can learn about regenerative medicine and they can see that there's other options. And that.
I mean, that crazy kook, Aaron Rodgers.
Right, I know, right?
Taking ayahuasca and going in dark rooms.
Right,
and,
he does that stuff, huh?
And he had
wild.
and calling out Jimmy Kimmel.
Called out Jimmy. Yes, he did, yeah. And he also avoided the V,
Right. And alternative medicine, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. A lot of people in Ecuador don't have health insurance. Like, it's not super common amongst the population here to carry health insurance. Ecuador does have free public health care, so you can go to the emergency room and get treated regardless. It's not great. The free system is not great. It's also, of course, bankrupt, as all of those systems are everywhere in the world. But you can get service for free. The hospitals tend to be very nice. Like the government hospitals tend to be new and nice. Yep. And you can get treated there if you need to. But then you can also, most people use the private system as well, which is incredible. And it's just such a difference. And I think it really speaks to like broader points about lifestyle and about some of the differences between here and there. Like I think illustrating the medical differences illustrates almost all the differences. Like that difference exists throughout almost all. Right.
That's like a microcosm of everything.
It's a microcosm. So I had an interesting experience recently, which I've had a million of these experiences. It's just fresh on my mind, and it reminded me. So, I went to go get. I wanted to get what are those? When they
diapers.
When they what are they? An ultrasound?
Yeah. Oh,
when the pregnant women. What
yeah.
Ultrasound.
Yeah, an ultrasound.
Some imaging on my baby. No, on my stomach. And this was not from a doctor, right? This was someone that just told me, hey, I have an image of this. So I go to the hospital, and I went to the same one we had gone to. I used to always go to Clinica San Agustin because I like that one. But the last couple of times I've gone to what is it? I think it's UTPL. It's like La Técnica. So it's like the private university's hospital. Yeah. So
and we went. Do you remember why we went there? Because the Egyptian doctor that we were just talking about, because he worked in some of the hospital systems, and he said for these types of exams, for ultrasound and MRI, like the technicians here are at this particular hospital, they have like a really well-schooled, high-quality technician that really understands what they're trying to do, what they're trying to capture. So it's nice. That's the reason why we went. At least why we went there when you and I went there for the knee stuff.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to describe this for people who maybe have never been here or experienced anything like this, right? So you're walking in to a totally state-of-the-art building. As nice and as modern a hospital building as I've ever seen, in the States. Not that I've been in a million hospitals, but it's new. It's nicer than most of the hospitals I've been in the States. So totally modern, very nice new building. Line of admins sitting there ready to greet you nicely with a big smile on their face and no attitude and no, fill out these forms. They don't fill out any forms. By the way, you don't fill out forms here.
Yeah,
You fill out no forms at medical appointments. So I say hi and I tell her, I want to have some imaging done on my stomach. And she says, do you have like the prescription or whatever? I was like, no, I just wanted to, no problem, right?
Right.
So she says, okay, well, you have to not have eaten. So I'm like, oh no, I knew that. It was like already the afternoon, but I'm like, I knew that I haven't eaten yet today. She's like, okay. She's like, actually, well, we can do it this afternoon. So she makes me an appointment for a couple hours later. I go back, I go in, I talk to the guy. I'm having a great conversation with the guy. He's really nice. He's who's doing the imaging. He really cares. We're having a very nice conversation about me and what I got going on and how how he might be able to help and what he thinks, and he's telling me, well, this will be able to see this and this, but it's not going to see this other stuff. So he wanted me to go see someone else, and really a very pleasant experience. Finish that, go out. The imaging, it was 2 different imaging sets. I think it was about $70 for the 2 total. And then he wanted me to see this gastroenterologist who he was recommending me. And I said to him, like, look, I have a kind of a distrust for doctors. And I said to him, like, look, you work here. I think he was actually a doctor, but I'm like, you work here. You kind of know who the doctors are that are good and are really helping people. Is there someone? He's like, yeah, this guy, So, okay, I go and I tell them, I want to make an appointment with that guy. So like, okay, sit down for a few minutes, wait for your images. I'm sitting there waiting, and the lady comes out a few minutes later. He's like, hey, the doctor's here now. You want to go see him right now? I'm like, yeah, sure. Pop up. The guy's like all packed. He's got his backpack. He's like ready to leave, but he had agreed. I go in again, completely informal. I sit down. He's this nice guy. He's not rushing me. He's totally human. He's actually asking me for my history and doesn't want the short version. Like he wants the full on like explanation. I'm kind of like a couple of times like, I don't know if you want all this, and he he really takes his time with me, and he doctors here tend to have something of a natural approach in general. Not that they don't work with pharmaceuticals, not that they won't do surgery, not that they aren't MDs, normal doctors, but in the culture, there's still some of that connection to lifestyle and herbs and in things like stress and trying to really tinker and figure out why is the body, behaving this way and not that way. And then in the course of this conversation, it was just so interesting to me, right? There's no CYA questions, right? There's no cover your ass questions, right? He's not worried about insurances. There's no insurance involved. He's not worried about if he doesn't do X, Y, or Z, he could get sued. So he's actually trying to figure out what's wrong with you. Right. And that visit was $27.50. That doctor visit cost me $27.50. He sent me for some testing, which cost about $180 for a bunch of blood and different tests. And that was kind of my experience, and it was just so incredibly human. Like I walked out of the hospital feeling good, happy with all the interactions, in a good mood. Not like, I just got railed, pulled over the coals and escaped, which is in what I'm used to.
Right. I mean, in the West, it's really with insurance and how litigious the society is in general, like malpractice insurance and the insurance industry, the healthcare insurance industry, like doctors don't want to do that. And any of the doctors that are on those, like we had lunch with my aunt and uncle, and they were asking about all the regenerative stuff I was doing, and they're like, wow, you're doing that there? Kind of the same response, like, in the Andes Mountains, like, you're that really there? You're doing that, and it's that price? Like, wow. So they were interested about that, and but they were talking about, they're in their 70s, so they're they had a couple of health issues. They've recently been to the doctor, and they were sharing their visits, and it was like, you go in, and this is a doctor they've had for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, I don't know, but it's like, they go in, it's a 15-minute appointment.
Yeah.
The doctor comes.
You wait an hour.
They're waiting. They're going in. Yeah. It's like, and they're explaining, like, all right, he's asking these questions. What's wrong? What are you feeling? Blah blah blah. And then he's typing them into an iPad, and they ask him, because they've been with him for a long time, and they're saying, he's like, this is life now. Like, I don't really doctor anymore. Like, I put symptoms into an iPad, and then it says, this is probably what it is. This is probably what can treat you, and I prescribe you drugs based on the symptoms, the combination of symptoms you put in. So, and do they want to, well, I don't have time. Like, all right, time's up. Like, that's it. You got to make another appointment. And they're talking about how some of these appointments are taking long time to get in. Like, my niece, or my sister-in-law was talking about getting an appointment in with a pediatrician that actually we used for our kids when we were still in the States, and it was like, I think she got like it was like 2 months out, to even get in to see them through the insurance system. So, it's definitely different. And even when you and I went, I had the similar experience with the technician, where in the States, I've had 3 knee surgeries, 3 shoulder surgeries in the States. The technicians don't even they don't even speculate.
No, they won't talk to you.
They won't even talk to you about what they think or what they see. That's for the doctor, that's for the doctor. And in here, like when I went for the scan on my knee, and he's explaining, well, I see this, and here's where I see some of this, and the doctor will confirm, and blah, 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 and they'll do the official diagnosis, but I've been doing this for 40 years or whatever it was, and this is what I see, this is what my specialty is, this is most likely what is wrong with your knee based on these scans, but like super helpful, like, and even asking, like, during the thing, it wasn't just like, all right, scan here, and he's asking me questions. Do you have pain here in the back of the leg? Things I wasn't even thinking about. In the calf.
Make sure he gets an image.
Right, and then he was getting scans at different spots. Not that they don't do that in the States. I don't remember, but it just seemed more.
There's a level of like humanity and importance that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had similar experiences here, and the doctors are always very nice. They're very sweet towards everybody, but when children are involved, it seems like they really care and they really want to help, and they. Yeah, it's true. And I think maybe part of this is as well as we're talking about the private sector in Ecuador. If you go to the public sector, they might be a little more overbooked.
Oh, yeah.
It's a different story for sure. But in the private hospitals, which are very affordable comparatively, at least to the West, which, I'm saying this now, but I was talking to an Ecuadorian guy recently, and he was arguing that South America is part of the West, even though we don't say that. But I'm just curious what you guys think. Like,
what was the argument?
It's the Western Hemisphere, and it's also
interesting.
It's
just
under
based
the
on
Roman
that.
Catholic Church, so it's the Western Church as well. And it's like, it's on the Western Hemisphere. It's from Spain. So Spain is part of the West, part of Europe, right?
Man, that's
the
fair.
East is like a different. This is not the East, but when you say
it's definitely not the East.
in the West. Anyways. But
yeah, right. We say Western world. We certainly we don't include because we're all racist.
Latin America.
Because you're racist. Well,
yeah. No, I'm not, Jesse.
Oh, thanks. Thank you for correcting me.
So, there's something you mentioned, Brendan. I just thought we could jump into it, and I'm sure people already kind of realize that. But if someone's interested in maybe checking out Ecuador but not ready to make the move here, a good trade-off is to spend the winters here. Yeah. Even though maybe you'll miss the holidays, or you could leave right after the holidays and come spend. But that's what my parents do, actually. My mom and dad are coming down. My in-laws are coming as well, and it's a great time to come here.
Sure.
It's like the most beautiful time of year here, when it's super cold and freezing there, and the weather's awful. Here the weather's great, so.
Right.
It's always,
no, that is good. My mother-in-law and her brother are coming in a month or so as well to spend some time, and Yeah, and there's a lot of people snowbird here. People,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, people snowbird all over the states, and you're starting to see more people consider Ecuador and South America in general for those snowbird options, because places like Florida and Texas and California and they're becoming more expensive. So or the Florida Keys, and they're not as attainable for some of those retirees that are on fixed incomes, where options like this, that not only are they learning about them, because nobody's really talking about them, but then you're seeing some of the infrastructure develop. You're seeing some of the services, like we talked about with the healthcare. Again, is the infrastructure on par with this United States? If you have that expectation,
Right.
you're going to be disappointed. But it's good.
Yes.
It's good. It's not third world, dirt roads everywhere and no infrastructure. It's not that at all. So if you have the right expectation, or you don't have any expectations, even better, and just come and visit and experience and see what it's like, and then be like, oh yes, I can do that, or no, that's not for me. That's really the best way to go about it. But the availability of community, of restaurants, of healthcare, of cost of living, it's a real option for people that are on fixed incomes.
Yes.
That they should consider, in my opinion.
And there's medical tourism as well.
Mm-hmm.
Things that you mentioned, right? People get their dental work done here. People can do some of those testings and go see some professionals for a fraction of the price. What you're doing
Yeah.
with stem cell therapy.
Yeah,
Someone
that's-
could come here for a few months, or maybe
Yeah, it's not really an industry here in like Loja, Vilcabamba. It's more in like Cuenca. That's
Right.
more of an industry, and people talk about it, but it's available here. Nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
People don't really talk about it. It's not advertised. People, they don't have websites, and so unless you don't.
Yeah.
So, but in Cuenca, I think medical tourism is in medical dentistry or tourist dentistry. That's much more popular in Mexico and
Sure.
other parts of South America and Central America.
Yeah, someone was mentioning, not that I condone this, but there are people who come to Ecuador to get plastic surgery as well.
Oh, no kidding.
Because there's good surgeons and they're
In
really cheap
Cuenca.
comparatively, to other places.
Yeah, plastic surgery here is common.
It's not that uncommon. You're right.
It's
For like the upper class.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, nose jobs,
Yes.
butts. I don't know how much breasts they do. Do they do a lot of breasts?
You tell me, Jesse.
A lot of butts and
You have a good
and
observational
noses.
skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot
well,
of noses.
I'm friends with a lot of Lojanos.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen.
I've had female Lojana friends of mine who have gone under the knife and showed off a larger butt
Yeah, the BBLs,
later.
Brazilian
Yeah,
butt
they
lifts.
do. They're very moderate with their
Yeah.
with their
It's not-
butt additions. That you don't even really notice.
Just more shapely.
It's a little. I guess.
Okay.
I
I
don't know. But the noses thing.
I've
is a
noticed the
funny one.
noses in
Yes,
Loja.
yes.
Well, and this is kind of funny, because there's some idea. We should ask Fernando to give us the details, but there's some idea about the shape of your nose, and apparently, like, the indigenous nose has some kind of shape, and so they're all trying to they'll tape their nose and they'll try to get it to get into the mold they want, or they'll go under the knife
Really?
to create
Yeah.
what I don't even know what they're trying to get away from or trying to get closer to, but
I
it's
think
some
it's
difference.
more like a European nose in a way. They're
Is
usually
that
looking
the-
for a smaller, more pointy, I guess,
Yeah.
nose. Seriously,
Because that
that's
stuff
what
all
I noticed.
exists here. I mean, people try to keep their skin color light.
As well.
Yeah, I
you'll
see with the
people
umbrellas
walking around
everywhere,
with the
right.
Umbrellas, and they're not getting in the sun.
Right.
And that's probably really just kind of the upper classes for the most part, I would say, but it definitely exists.
Yeah.
It's funny. People have such misconceptions about that stuff. People think the U.S. is super racist, but I think it might be the least racist country on earth. Honestly, people have been thinking it's racist for so long that it's
Yeah.
races actually get along really well in the U.S. and in places like Latin America, whatever racism, it was never addressed in any way, and so you actually have racist stuff, actually racist stuff going on in some Latin
There's
American
prejudice
countries.
against the indigenous from
Yeah.
the non-indigenous, right? There's
Yeah.
some of that. But I guess racism based on skin color and stuff, I don't
Yeah,
think.
I mean,
was
it
told by-
depends how you define it. Like, I'm not saying
yeah.
anyone's hating anyone else. So if you're defining racism that way, I'd say there's almost none, if any,
Right,
in Latin America. But in terms of trying to keep your skin light and
Sure.
and like sort of identifying people based on that and pigeonholing them into certain roles
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
you know, as well as the indigenous stuff.
Right.
And, yeah.
Well, but yeah, so yeah, that could be defined as racism, I guess. But it's more like people want to look a certain way, and they think it looks more beautiful or whatever to look a certain way. But it doesn't mean they have prejudice against people that don't look
True.
that way or whatever.
You know, we need to show them. So I noticed this, you know, as we were, you know, again, back in the States for a couple of weeks. So I watched some, you know, media, some TV from the States and Hollywood, and I noticed, like, maybe for the first time recently, where it was really clear, like all the young Hollywood stars from our era, or Jesse and I's era, you know, from the 90s and 2000s, and particularly the women, some of the men too that have had plastic surgery, but they've all had plastic surgery, and it's so apparent, and it looks so bad now. It looks gross. It looks weird, and it's like, wow, now that you're like in your 40s and 50s, and you, like, what, gosh, I hope Ecuadorian culture they see that now, and some of the young folks see that and say, I don't want to do that, because when I'm that age, I'm going to look like that. I mean, like, I don't know, aging without plastic surgery, if you're, you know, doing things that are minimizing chemicals and eating clean and having some less toxin, like, you can age gracefully, and it's beautiful. Like, you see women age beautifully. Yes, you're older. Yes, your skin's a little looser and your pores are a little bit, you know, like, yes, all that stuff's there, but women can age gracefully and beautifully. Then you see these women that are all this surgery, and you're like, they just look weird. They look fake. It just looks gross now. And I notice it in so many of, like, my young man Hollywood crushes, and I'm just like, whoa, wow.
You mean like Nick Lachey?
Well, Nick Lachey, I'm not sure. I love Nick Lachey, man. Nick Lachey. Don't you dare talk about Nick Lachey. He does not do plastic surgery. And he has a great voice. It's very soothing. He's got a phenomenal voice. I listen to him
That hit better than I expected.
Yeah, you caught me on that one a little bit. Yeah. Jennifer Aniston. No, Jennifer Aniston, like Courtney Cox, people from Friends. Gosh, a lot of the. What's the something about Mary actress?
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. Cameron Diaz.
Cameron Diaz. Yeah, they all look.
That movie was
They
great.
all look strange now. They all look almost like they're not the same people.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's weird. Yeah.
Interesting.
So don't do plastic surgery, kids.
Just accept how God made you.
Yeah.
You're beautiful as you are.
Mm-hmm.
Words to live by, brother.
Right.
Words to live by. Well, if you're interested in prison riots,
I mean, who's not?
and death and destruction,
Right. I mean, who's not, right?
then tune in next week, or should we jump into that now?
What time is it?
Well, it's 11:05 right now.
So we could jump into it.
Got
Sure.
differing opinions.
Well,
you
you
guys
want-
want to
you
arm
wanna-
wrestle over it?
What, you don't want to start?
now? Yeah.
Carlos.
Yeah. All right. So some new.
If you're interested in real estate properties, all of our property videos will now be uploaded on a different channel. Please click the link in the description down below.